Mike Waltz is not a television pundit. He's the United States ambassador to the United Nations, a cabinet-level official speaking on the record about an active military blockade, ongoing ceasefire negotiations, and the future of a regime the United States has spent 47 days trying to destroy. And buried inside his interview on Fox News this afternoon was a single detail that tells you more about where these negotiations are heading than anything else said today.
The U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, joins us right now. Ambassador, welcome to you. What do you want people to know about the current situation as we speak?
Well, thanks, Sandra. As the vice president said, they've laid out a very basic framework for Iran to behave as a normal nation. Number one, stop supporting terrorist proxies. Number two, you cannot have a nuclear program, as not only President Trump has said, as the United Nations has said in resolution after resolution for decades. That's both enrichment and highly enriched uranium. And you have to open the sea lanes. And that's this latest action from the president that says you cannot hold the entire world hostage. You cannot, even though this Iranian regime started its existence by holding Americans hostage. You can't hold the world's economies hostage. He has flipped the script. You have tremendous naval assets there, and the Central Command just put out its statistics in the sense of it is turning Iranian ships around. Iran doesn't get to choose the winners and losers on the global economy. The United States will do that until all ships are open. So no ships come out or all ships come out.
The Strait of Hormuz was the biggest trump card that Iran held. That was their biggest point of leverage. The president seems to have taken that away from them. And if he can open up the rest of the strait by using the two guided missile destroyers that are there now and mine-clearing equipment that we have got, and maybe some that other countries have as well, I mean, the Iranians have no choice but to come back to the table.
We put our two destroyers through. Mine-sweeping operations are ongoing, John, and you're absolutely right. What President Trump has done is taken that leverage, taken Iran trying to hold the entire world's economies hostage, has taken that off the table now with this action. I mean, we cannot, I can tell you from the United Nations standpoint, live in a world where two parties have a conflict, regardless of whether you agree with the conflict or not, and you have, I don't know, a country trying to shut down the Strait of Gibraltar or the Bering Strait or any other international waterway as leverage in a conflict. We've taken that off the table, and that isolates the whole issue to what President Trump has been consistent on since the 1980s, even since before he was in politics. We cannot have a genocidal regime with its finger on a nuclear button. Period. And I've got to tell you, I'm just thankful that finally we have a president who's actually taking bold, decisive action to take care of a problem before it's an absolute crisis and before we have zero options. And that is what have no doubt the Iranian regime was looking to build such a shield of conventional missiles. We saw what they've done with just what they had now. Yep. Imagine another year or 2 years, 5 years from now that it couldn't be dealt with, and then they were free to have a program.
If they put a nuke on the top of one of those, too. Yeah.
Yeah, Ambassador, I just want to get your reaction to this. This is the Vice President, J.D. Vance, on with Brett last night, special report. He's identifying what he said were some good signs, even though negotiations were breaking down last weekend. Listen.
I think did make some progress. They moved in our direction, which is why I think we would say that we had some good signs, but they didn't move far enough. Whether we have further conversations, whether we ultimately get to a deal, I really think the ball is in the Iranian court because we put a lot on the table.
What did you take away from that?
Well, we have to remember, Sandra, this is the highest level talks ever between the Iranian regime and the United States. They came, they were direct, which the previous Ayatollah had absolutely refused to do. And it seems, as President Trump repeatedly says, they want a deal. They need to have a deal. The other interesting thing was they brought their central banker. And I don't think President Trump gets enough credit for the second national security policy memorandum he put in place in his second term was to reinstitute maximum pressure. Their economy is in free fall at the UN. We drove snapback sanctions, so the rest of the world has joined us. So time is not on their side here. And as President Trump says, we have the cards, not Iran. We'll see if they come back for a reasonable deal.
One of my favorite songs by the rock band The Who includes the line, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." And it seems that's where we are with Ghalibaf and Araghchi. It's still the same old regime. They're an outlier in that region, unlike all the other countries in the Persian Gulf, including Saudi Arabia, moving toward more progressive modernization, peace and stability, prosperity. Iran wants to remain a rogue regime. And if the same regime is in place, can you ever have real peace and stability across that region, or are they going to continue to try to screw with everybody there?
Well, they have their radical actors, no doubt, who solely exist to export the revolution. And as I pointed out to the ambassador from Iran at the United Nations, name me a country that is better off because of Iran's export of terrorism. Certainly not Lebanon, certainly not Syria, certainly not Yemen,
not the
Gaza or anywhere else. But we do think we're dealing with some rational actors. They have to deal with the clerics and they have to deal with the Ayatollahs. But look right across the Gulf. Look, this is what I point out too. Look at Dubai. Look at Manama. Look at Kuwait City. Look at Riyadh. I mean, Oman. They are exploding in terms of growth and a better life for not only their citizens but for the next generation. We'll see if we don't box them in to they have no
the one
path.
thing that's holding that whole region back is Iran.
Well, and for so many people who talk about the pivot to Asia, you know what? When President Trump finally solves this problem that sucks us back in the Middle East over and over again because of the violence that Iran exports, then we'll be able to really focus on the rest of the world.
All right, Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Iran brought its central banker to Islamabad.
Right now.
Waltz mentioned it almost casually. The Iranian delegation to the Islamabad talks included not just Ghalibaf and Araghchi, the political and diplomatic leads, but Iran's central banker. And everything, Waltz added. Nations don't send their central bankers to negotiations about military ceasefires. They send central bankers when they're negotiating economic terms, sanctions relief, asset unfreezing, currency stabilization, trade resumption, the machinery of a country's financial survival. During the 40-day war, Iran earned about $9 billion from crude exports. The blockade is expected to cost approximately $150 million daily. Iran's economy was already in freefall before the war. Hyperinflation, currency collapse, unemployment, 6 weeks of bombing destroyed what was left of its industrial base. And now the blockade is cutting off the one revenue stream that kept the regime solvent. Iran's central banker was in that room because Iran's central bank is running out of time. Waltz knows this. The administration knows this. And the fact that he said it on television, they brought their central banker, was a signal, delivered with the precision of a diplomat who understands that what you say publicly at the UN podium and what you say on Fox News serve different but complementary purposes. The signal, Iran is broke, and they know it. The ambassador laid out the U.S. position with unusual clarity. 1, stop supporting terrorist proxies. 2, no nuclear program, no enrichment, no highly enriched uranium. 3, open the Strait of Hormuz completely. All ships or no ships, as he put it, echoing Trump and Cotton. Iran doesn't get to be the gatekeeper. CENTCOM confirmed the blockade applies to all vessel traffic, regardless of flag entering or departing Iranian ports, while not impeding freedom of navigation for vessels transiting to non-Iranian destinations. Waltz framed the blockade not as an act of war, but as an act of fairness. Iran doesn't get to choose the winners and losers of the global economy. The United States will do that. That sentence deserves examination. The ambassador to the United Nations just said on television that the United States, not the international community, not the Security Council, not a multilateral coalition, will determine who benefits from the global economy until Iran complies. That is a statement of unilateral economic sovereignty over the world's most important shipping lane. It may be justified by the circumstances. It is also the most explicit articulation of American imperial prerogative that any U.S. official has made since the war began. While the
have no
world
doubt
watches
the
the
Iranian
Strait,
regime was
something is
looking to
happening
build
at the State
such a
Department
shield
that could
of
reshape the
conventional
Middle East
missiles.
more
We saw what
fundamentally
they've
than
done
any
with
blockade.
just what they had now. Imagine
Secretary
another
Rubio
year,
is
2
hosting
years,
both the
5
Israeli
years from
and
now that it
Lebanese
couldn't be
ambassadors,
dealt with,
the
and then
first
they were
direct
free to
talks
have a
between the
motion
two
to put a
nations
nuke on.
since
That's right.
1993. They
Yeah, Ambassador, I
reportedly
just want to get
agree
your
on the
reaction to
need
this.
to
This is the
disarm
Vice President
Hezbollah.
J.D. Vance on with
Waltz
Brett
didn't
last night,
discuss this
special
in
report.
detail, but his broader framework,
identifying what
name
he
a country
said were
that is
some
better off
good
because of
signs,
Iran's
even though
export of
negotiations
terrorism,
were breaking
provides
down
the
last week in
intellectual
Israel.
foundation. His list
I
was
think did
pointed,
make some
not
progress. They
Lebanon,
moved
not
in our
Syria,
direction, which is why
not
I
Yemen.
think we
Iran's
would
proxy
say
network
that
has
we
made
had
every
some good
country it
signs,
touches
but they
worse.
didn't move far enough.
If Lebanon's
Whether we
government,
have further
exhausted by
conversations,
2,000
whether we
dead, a
ultimately get to
million
a deal,
displaced,
I
and
really
the
think the
heaviest
ball is in the
Israeli
Iranian
bombardment
court
in
because we
decades,
put a lot on the
agrees to a
table.
framework
What did
for
you take away
Hezbollah's
from that?
disarmament, it would
Well, we
represent
have to
the
remember,
most
Sandra,
significant
this is the
realignment
highest
in Middle
level
Eastern
talks
security
ever,
since the Abraham
between
Accords.
the Iranian
It would remove
regime,
Iran's
and the
most
United
capable
States.
proxy from the board, and it would
They
eliminate
came,
the issue
they
that
were
nearly
direct,
collapsed the
which,
ceasefire
the
in its
previous
first
Ayatollah
hours.
had
The
absolutely
Fox host
refused to
didn't
do.
explore this.
And it
John Roberts
seems,
asked about
as
regime
President
change.
Trump repeatedly
Sandra
said,
Smith asked
they
about
want a
Vance's
deal, they
debrief.
need to have a
Neither
deal.
asked
The
about the
other
Lebanon
interesting
talks
thing is
happening
they
at
brought
that
their
moment in
central
the same
banker,
city
and
where
I
they
don't
were
think President Trump
broadcasting.
gets
At
enough
the end of
credit
the
for
interview,
second
Waltz made an
national security
argument that
policy
reveals the
memorandum
administration's
he put in place
long-term
in his second
strategic
term
thinking.
was to
For so many
reinstitute,
people who talk about the
maximum
pivot to
pressure.
Asia,
Their
when
economy is
President
in
Trump
free fall
finally
at the
solves this
UN.
problem that
We
sucks
drove
us back into the
snapback
Middle
sanctions,
East over and
so,
over
the
because
rest
of
of
the
the world
violence
has
that Iran
joined us.
exports,
So time is not
then
on their
we'll be able
side
to
here.
really focus
And
on
as President Trump
he was
says,
cut off.
we have the cards,
But the
not
sentence
Iran.
completes itself.
We'll see if
China.
they come back for a reasonable
This
deal.
is the grand
One of my favorite
strategic
songs by the
argument
rock
for
band
the
The Who
entire war.
includes the line,
Not
"Meet
that
the new
Iran
boss,
was an
same as
imminent
the old
nuclear
boss." And it
threat.
seems
The
that's where we are with
2026
Ghalibaf and
intelligence
Iran chief.
assessment
It's still
said
the
it
same
wasn't
old
actively
regime. They're
building a
an
bomb.
outlier
Not
in
that the strait
region,
needed to
unlike
be
all the other
reopened.
countries
It was
in
open
the
before the
Persian
war
Gulf,
started.
including Saudi
But that
Arabia,
Iran
moving
is the
toward
reason
more
America
progressive
can't pivot to the
modernization,
Pacific.
peace and stability
And
and
eliminating the
prosperity.
Iranian threat
Iran
frees
wants to
the U.S.
remain
to
a
confront
rogue
China.
regime.
The
And
irony
if
is
the same
exquisite.
regime is
U.S.
in place,
intelligence
can you
indicates
ever
China
have
is
real
preparing
peace
to
and
deliver
stability
new air
across that
defense
region,
systems to
or are they
Iran.
gonna continue to
China
try to
called
screw
the
with
U.S.
everybody?
blockade
Well, they have the
dangerous
radical
and
actors, no doubt,
irresponsible.
who solely
China
exist to
purchased more
export
than
the
80% of Iran's
and
oil
as
exports
I
in
pointed out to the
2025.
ambassador from
The war
Iran
that was
at the
supposed to
United
free
Nations,
America
name
to
me a
confront
country
China
that
has
is better
instead
off because
created
of
a
Iran's,
crisis that
because
puts
of Iran's
America
export
and
of
China
terrorism.
on a
Certainly not
collision
Lebanon,
course
certainly not
in the
Syria,
very
certainly not
waterway
Yemen,
where the
not Gaza or
confrontation was
anywhere
supposed
else.
to end.
But
You cannot
we do
pivot
think
to
we're dealing
Asia
with
by starting a war that
some
gives
rational
Asia's
actors. They
dominant
have to deal
power
with the
a
clerics, and
reason
they have
to
to deal,
arm your enemy.
with
The
the
segment
Ayatollahs.
played
But
Vance
look
telling
right
Brett
across the
Baier
Gulf.
that the
Look,
Islamabad
this is what I
talks
point out,
produced
too.
some good
Look
signs
at Dubai, look
that
at
Iran
Manama, look at
moved in
Kuwait
our
City, look at
direction,
Riyadh. I mean,
even though negotiations
Oman,
broke
they're
down.
exploding,
Waltz confirmed this
in
assessment,
terms of
noting
growth
that the
and a
talks
better
were
life,
the highest level ever
for
between
not
the
only their
Iranian
citizens,
regime
but for
and
the
the
next
United
generation.
States, and that
We'll
Iran
see if
came
we
for
don't
direct
box them in to have
negotiations,
no
something
doubt.
the
holding that whole
previous
region back is
Ayatollah
Iran.
had refused.
Well, and
But
for
here's
so
the
many people who
tension
talk
nobody
about the pivot
acknowledged.
to Asia, you
Vance
know what?
said the
President
ball
Trump
is in
finally
Iran's
solves this
court.
problem
Waltz
that
said
sucks us
Iran
back in
needs
the
this
Middle East
deal
over and
more
over
than the
again because of
U.S.
the violence that
Cotton
Iran
said
exports.
Iran needs more
Then
pain
we'll be
before
able
it gets
to,
serious.
to really focus
And
on the
Trump
rest of the
said he
world.
doesn't
All right,
care if
Ambassador,
they
thank
come
you so
back
much
or
for
not.
joining us today.
If the
All right,
U.S.
thank you.
truly
Thanks,
doesn't care whether
Be sure to
negotiations
like and
resume,
subscribe for all
why
the
is
Fox
the vice
News
president
latest on
publicly
YouTube and catch
identifying
full
good
shows
signs?
streaming now
If
on
Iran
Fox
needs
One.
more pain,
The U.S.
why
Ambassador
are
to the
multiple
United Nations,
reports
Mike
saying
Waltz, joins
talks
us
could
right
resume
now.
Thursday?
Ambassador, welcome to you.
If the ball is in
what do you want
Iran's
people
court,
to know about the current
why is the
situation as we
U.S.
speak?
the one parking 10,000
Well,
troops and
thanks,
12
Sandra.
warships outside
And
the strait?
as the Vice
The answer is that everyone needs a deal, and nobody can admit it. Trump needs gas prices to drop before the midterms. Iran needs revenue to survive. Gulf states need the Strait open to sell oil. China needs Iranian crude. Europe needs energy. The FAO needs fertilizer to flow before the planting season ends. The blockade is leverage, but leverage works both ways, and the longer it lasts, the more the cost falls on everyone, including the country imposing it. The Fox segment's guest earlier today said U.S. destroyers found no mines during their transit. Waltz confirmed, "We put our 2 destroyers through. Minesweeping operations are ongoing." According to one report, Iran lost track of mines it planted in the Strait and is therefore unable to fully open it even if it wanted wanted
there,
to.
and
So the
the
emerging
Central
picture
Command
is
just put out
Iran claimed to
its
have mined the strait
statistics in the sense
extensively.
of it is
The insurance
turning
industry
Iranian
treated the
ships
claim
around.
as fact
Iran
and
doesn't
priced
get
commercial
to
transit
choose the
accordingly.
winners and losers
U.S.
on the
warships
global
transited
economy.
and survived.
The United
Mine clearing
States,
operations are
will do
establishing
that
a safe
until
corridor,
all
and the
ships are
real
open.
barrier
So
to
no ships
reopening
come
may
out
not
or
be
all ships
mines
come
at
out.
all.
You know, the Strait
It
of
may be the
Hormuz
war
was the
risk
biggest trump
premiums
card that
set
Iran
by
held.
8
That was the
underwriting
biggest
firms
point
in
of
London.
leverage. The
If
president
CENTCOM
seems
can
to have
publish a
taken
verified
that
safe
away
route
from
and the
them.
insurers
And if he
respond,
can open
commercial
up the
traffic
rest
could
of the
resume
strait by
regardless of
using
what
the
Iran
two
says.
Guided missile
The
destroyers that are
blockade
there
of
now,
Iranian ports would
mine-clearing
continue, but
equipment
the
that we
global
have got,
energy
maybe
choke
some
point
other
would
countries have
reopen
as
for
well.
everyone
I mean,
else.
the Iranians
That
have
would
no
be the
choice but to come
strategic
back.
equivalent of checkmate.
We put our two
Iran's strait
destroyers
leverage
through.
evaporates, its
Minesweeping
oil revenue is
operations are
blocked,
ongoing,
and the world's
John,
ships
and
flow
you're
freely
absolutely
past
right.
its coastline
What
while
President
its
Trump
economy
has done
collapses.
is taken
Whether
that
Iran
leverage,
accepts that outcome
taken
peacefully
Iran
or
trying to
responds
hold
with
the
the
entire
threatened
world's
attacks on neighboring ports is the
hostage,
question that keeps
is taking that off
10,000
the table
American
now
service
with
members
this
on
action.
alert
I mean,
tonight.
we cannot,
What
I can
America
tell you from the
holds:
United Nations
military
standpoint,
dominance,
live in a
blockade
world where
enforcement,
two parties have a
mine clearing
conflict, regardless
capability,
of whether you agree with the
10,000
conflict or
troops in
not,
position,
and you
a
have,
ceasefire
I don't
it can
know, a
break
country
at
trying
will,
to shut down
and
the Strait of
economic
Gibraltar,
leverage over
or
a
the Bering
regime
Strait,
losing
or any
$150
other
million a day.
international waterway
What Iran
as
holds:
leverage in a
enriched
conflict. We've
uranium
taken that off the
underground, the
table, and
threat
that
of attacks
isolates the
on
whole
Gulf
issue
ports,
to what
the
President
loyalty
Trump
of
has been
Hezbollah
consistent on
increasingly
since the
contested,
1980s,
the support
even
of
since before he
China
was in
increasingly
politics. We
complicated,
cannot have
and the
a
knowledge that
genocidal
global
regime
oil
with its
reserves
finger
are
on the
nearly
nuclear
exhausted,
button.
and
Period.
every
And
day
I've
the
gotta
strait
tell you,
stays restricted
I'm
costs
just
the world
thankful that
economy
finally
billions.
we have a president
What nobody
who's
holds:
actually
a signed
taking
agreement,
bold, decisive
a
action to
timeline,
take care of a
a
problem
definition of
before
victory
it's an
both
absolute
sides
crisis
accept,
and before
or
we
any
have zero
guarantee that the
options.
next
And
24
that is
hours
what
don't bring a missile strike on a Saudi port, a mine
have no doubt,
explosion
the
under a
Iranian
tanker,
regime was looking
or
to
a
build
presidential Truth
such a
Social
shield
post that changes
of
everything.
conventional missiles.
Waltz said
We saw
Trump
what they've
flipped
done
the script.
with just what they have
Maybe,
now. Imagine
but the
another
script
year or 2
isn't
years,
finished.
5
And in
years
this
from
story,
now that it couldn't be dealt
nobody,
with,
not
and
the
then they were free to
ambassador,
have a
not
project.
the
They put a
president,
nuke on
not the
Taiwan.
Ayatollah's son, not
Yeah,
the central
Ambassador, I just wanna
banker
get your
who
reaction
flew
to
to
this. This is the Vice
Islamabad,
President J.D.
knows
Vance on with
how
Brett
it
last
ends.
night, special
They
report.
only know it has to.
He's identifying what he said were some good signs, even though negotiations were breaking down last weekend. Listen.
I think did make some progress. They moved in our direction, which is why I think we would say